Hey guys, it's Sajid Dan One again here, back again with another Dan Chat episode for you guys. And today we're going to be taking a look at a really interesting roguelike crossover game for the 3DS, and that's Chat-Etrian Mystery Dungeon. Now, Chat-Etrian Mystery Dungeon is a crossover game between Atlus's classic first-person dungeon crawler series, Chat-Etrian Odyssey, and Spike Chunsoft's long-running series, Mystery Dungeon. Now, the name Mystery Dungeon might actually sound familiar to you guys. It's actually a really long-running roguelike series that can honestly be considered one of the godfathers for the genre itself, and it's a series that often gets tied into other popular series such as Dragon Quest, Final Fantasy, and more notable recently, Pokemon. Now, for those who don't know the genre of a roguelike, it's actually an RPG subgenre that is often denoted by procedural level or dungeon generation, turn-based gameplay, and the concept of permadeath, or in some cases strong sense of punishment for dying. And that's part of the kind of scheme of roguelikes, is they're often denoted as being very, very challenging games, but because they are so challenging, they're very rewarding at the same time. Now, as a huge fan of roguelikes personally and a huge fan of the Chat-Etrian Odyssey series, I was actually really looking forward to Chat-Etrian Mystery Dungeon. So without further ado, let's dive into this episode of Dan Chat on Chat-Etrian Mystery Dungeon. The basic premise of Chat-Etrian Mystery Dungeon takes place in a city called Azlarga, which is a city overflowing with beautiful scenery. The town flourishes thanks to the constant circulation of adventurers who are all attracted to the various mystery dungeons that surround the area. Now, I'll be honest here, the story component isn't the strongest part of the Chat-Etrian series. This is not to say that the story is bad per se, it's the contrary. The story is used differently in these kinds of games, often serving the purpose of fleshing out context for the world, and the sense of mystery becomes your ultimate motivator. That being said, you're mainly going to play this game for the rewarding and challenging roguelike gameplay. Now let's delve into the gameplay, which is one of the most important factors, especially with a roguelike RPG. And do bear with me because there's actually a lot to cover. Chat-Etrian Mystery Dungeon, similar to the Chat-Etrian Odyssey series, features various classes to choose from. All these various classes have distinct skills to use and various advantages and disadvantages. Part of the fun, similar to Chat-Etrian Odyssey as well, is experimenting with all the different classes and finding the best party that best suits you and your playstyle, which will vary from person to person. This element of class experimentation in RPGs has always been strangely satisfying for me. The core gameplay revolves around a very traditional roguelike formula. You take your party into these randomly generated multi-floor mystery dungeons with the ultimate objective to reach the end of the dungeon where a powerful boss awaits you. Within the dungeon, you take control of the party leader, and the other party members follow along and act on their own accord. Now, the party leader can be changed at any time, and it's actually critical to swap leaders depending on certain situations that may arise. There are also certain times where you can take control of every party member's actions as well. The core of the game is turn-based. Every time you move, attack, use items, enemies will in turn move or attack. This is very important to take into account when playing roguelikes in this traditional fashion. Using your turns and movements properly can be the difference between life and death. So needless to say, strategy and strategizing is of the utmost importance. Now let's discuss the specific actions you can do each turn. This includes moving, which when not in battle regenerates health but depletes FP, which we will get to what FP is in a bit. You can use various healing, offensive and defensive items. You can use standard attacks and use various skills, which new skills can be learned via in-depth skill tree, which allows you to personally spec your characters to your liking. There are also blast skills, which can be very powerful and beneficial, as well as allow you to issue specific party orders. Like a typical RPG, each character has HP, TP for skills, and FP. Now I want to cover FP briefly. FP is essentially a character's hunger level in the game. Every time you move, it depletes FP, and if it gets to 0, your character will fall. There are certain things you can do to treat hunger, such as eating food items, stepping on amber tiles, and remember what I said before about learning when to change leaders? Well, this comes into play here. For example, only the leader's hunger will go down, meaning if you get low on hunger, you can just switch to another party member who has more FP and you can keep moving forward. Now, as for the dungeons themselves, as mentioned before, they are randomly generated and consist of multiple floors. Each floor in the dungeon is separated into various rooms connected by the long meandering hallways. Within each room you may encounter enemies, traps, items, money, wandering chests, harvest areas, amber, and most importantly staircases. Once you reach a staircase you can go down or up to the next floor, and dungeons do get complex with multiple staircases on each floor, resulting in various paths. Now I need to touch base on the fort fort mechanic in the game, because this is actually really important. In the game, you can bring up the dungeon map and make forts. The reason forts are important is they essentially allow you to lock a dungeon's formation, meaning the dungeon layout won't be randomly generated like it normally would. Now the floors will still be randomly generated, but the overall dungeon layout becomes locked, and you will be able to know the exact routes to take to make it through. There are various types of forts, and some feature a device which allows you to warp back to town, and forts can give you additional party slots, meaning you can send additional reserve units to forts, and the benefit to that is they will gain experience over time as well. This is great for having multiple members at a consistent level with your main party. This essentially allows you to level other classes without having to actually use them. Now here's the infamous punishing roguelike mechanic. If you get a game over, which to be honest from personal experience seems very hard to do in Chat-Etrian Mystery Dungeon, but if you do get a game over, your party will be sent back to town and you will lose all of your money and items. But wait, remember those forts I mentioned? If you have members in those forts, you can actually attempt to rescue a fallen party with another rescue party. This is why I feel overall Chat-Etrian Mystery Dungeon is actually a very easy roguelike, which by no means is a bad thing and actually makes it great for beginners roguelike, but I do like me a challenge, and that impending fear of dying and being punished, I never really felt that in this game. I always felt like my characters were just strong enough, and in fact maybe a bit OP, and only came close to death's door on boss fights and some bad room spawns. That mechanic of a rescue team actually takes away a bit of that rewarding fear of death, as it acts like a second chance. All this meaning if you're expecting a very challenging roguelike, this may not fit your bill, but for those looking for a more casual roguelike experience, this is definitely up your alley. Since there were so many gameplay mechanics to cover with a game like this, let's touch base on the town really quickly. In town you can visit various areas, so here's a quick rundown. You have Kasumi's Inn where you can store and withdraw items as well as save. There's Chano Retail where you can buy weapons, armor, accessories, and items, which more items become available as you sell off more materials, and you can also forge attributes to weapons and shields. The Amber Restaurant is where you go to take quests and order food, which gives your members a 1 dungeon beneficial status effect. The Explorers Guild is where you can manage and edit your party and squads, as well as register new members, which FYI you will come across random adventures in your dungeon travels from time to time, which you may choose to recruit, and they often give you an item as well. Magan's House allows you to take main missions for story progression, and do town redevelopment, which allows you to level up facilities, which gives various bonuses. Stein's Lab allows you to research and read up on various backstory, monsters, and items, and the Skyship Port is where you go to enter dungeons, and that's the basics of the town. Moving on to presentation, the presentation Chat-Etrian Mystery Dungeon features nice 2D character portraits and colorful background art. In dungeon, characters are depicted in a cute chibi fashion, and dungeons, although simplistic looking, are very colorful and distinct from each respective dungeon. The soundtrack, as typical of the series, is composed by one of my all-time favorites, Yuzo Koshiro. The game features a calming yet catchy town theme. Additionally, there are nice unique tunes for each dungeon, with some that stand out more than others, and there are some returning tracks from past Chat-Etrian Odyssey games as well. Although I don't think Chat-Etrian Mystery Dungeon is Yuzo's best work, and maybe a bit subpar compared to past Chat-Etrian Odyssey soundtracks, I still think it's really good for what it is. So how do I feel about Chat-Etrian Mystery Dungeon? I went into this game as a huge roguelike and Chat-Etrian Odyssey fan, and remember being really excited when this game was announced. And well, I like Chat-Etrian Mystery Dungeon quite a bit actually. The gameplay is very well done and has everything I expect from a roguelike, and although it's certainly on the easier side of things, I actually don't mind that. I do love me a good challenge as mentioned before, but I have to say it's actually kinda nice to get some quality roguelike style gameplay and be able to relax and really appreciate the gameplay, and it's quite addictive. I do have to really stress though that roguelikes are definitely not for everyone. It is one of the subgenres of RPGs that I think appeals to a very specific audience. Now that being said, I do feel Chat-Etrian Mystery Dungeon, since it is fairly easier compared to other roguelikes out there, is a nice approachable roguelike for beginners to grasp the format of a traditional roguelike, and veteran roguelike fans will still find a lot to love here. Overall, I think Chat-Etrian Mystery Dungeon is a very well made roguelike spin-off of the series. It offers so much depth to lose yourself in, and is just strangely addicting and relaxing. The game just oozes quality in so many regards. That being said, those looking for a really fun, quality handheld roguelike RPG might want to look into this one. So those were my thoughts on Chat-Etrian Mystery Dungeon. As always, I want to thank you guys for watching. Until we chat again guys, please take it easy. Bye guys.